So right now, this is just what you get when, I have adjusted this is how you adjust the brightness of the map. Because you just use the color adjustment, okay? Now, the hardware, that's just so that you can see it in the viewport, but you can gauge kind of the density and use that as a means to go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get something around about that matches the viewport. I don't know why they didn't tie them together, but maybe they did it just because they have a good reason. Okay, so when I do go ahead and I'm going to render it and just show you that, in fact, it does affect the brightness, but it isn't affecting the lighting on the object. It's just, right now, all we're getting is reflection. It's not actually feeding the light. And so, okay. And you're going to want to make sure final gathering, that's one key thing. So in your rendering settings, these have got to happen. Otherwise, you may think that it's doing something, but in fact it's not. So we want to go to our indirect lighting and make sure that our finer gathering, and I just use the default for now, is turned on. Right? So that is working, and it looks like I actually have lights on because this is lit. I can tell it's blue. And have that, so just so I can make sure that it's really lighting with the HDR image and make sure, okay, so that's off. That's at 3. So I had already gone through and tried to repaint the render, okay, from what happens when you utilize the HDR as the sole light. Okay, and this blue is probably, yeah. So I'm going to render again. And then see if I have absolutely no contamination at this point. Okay, so already it's as if there's no light on my model, and that really is not true. Like if you were actually standing in that scene, you would be lit up. And this is only ambient light is the only thing that we're witnessing right now. It's only ambient light, so it's like a skylight that's lighting, and that's decent. For you want that element, but that isn't the truth. I would have light coming onto the rest of the body. Boy, the eyes look pretty damn good because it's reflecting because it's the environment. So now, just by simply coming over here, I'm going to look at my sky for my HDR dome here, and I'm going to look at light emissions. I will turn that on. I want to make sure. So now I'm going to go like this, and once I turn that bad boy on, it's going to take a little bit. And I'm just going to bring my array depth down to 1 for now, because that each level that you go up, it has some render time. But watch the difference. Okay, so I'll save that. Yeah, we'll do. I'm going to play pom for you. What?
Between this render and the white
The only difference is this light emit. That's it. I just said, and you can turn any object into a light emitting object.
And which object did you select?
I selected, okay, so when you go into indirect lighting, and I guess I'll start it from scratch. When you go in and you say use an HDR or an image-based lighting system, it automatically creates a dome, and then you have to select the image, put the image in there. But if you just put it in there and you don't turn on light emission, it's only affecting ambience and reflection. But once you say emit light, every little bit of color data in that map lights from all directions. And so you'll see drastic difference in the way that that lit my head. Now, I don't encourage this for production animation. I encourage it to set it up so you know how the light should be. So when I finally get there, you're going to notice, depending on where I could also rotate the dome and set the lights up, and make it different. Because wherever the sun's at, the sunset, wherever that sun's at, is where the major light source is coming from. Okay? So then, when you notice that, and being outside, if this was an interior, it could get a little more complicated. Or if there was something bouncing light over here, it could get complicated. Just slightly more complex. But since this is just a simple outdoor scene, I just need to locate the position of that sun and put a direct light in it, or indirect. That acts like a sun. And then adjust it. Turn off the light emission, save that image, and then try to match it by putting lights in it. So, see what I'm getting. What? That's different. Okay? So, remember I told you about the light rig. It always follows them around, right? Well, this is where you start setting some of this up. So, way different, but slow as molasses. Slow. Again, for your test renders, of which you're going to judge all your quality from, you do an absolute high. And then you have to come in and rebuild it for speed. So, this does play nice with my light rate. I could come in now, change this to this color, up the intensity. This is soft fill over here. And so using this to manipulate my light rig that I set up on. There is one more setting you have to make sure you have turned off, and that is make sure the default lights are not active, because otherwise it will light with the default light and the HDR. So there's a setting, and I'm just trying to remember where that is at. It's either in the render setting or if it's in the light. So, I'm trying to grab, like I said, I'm trying to get more. There's so many good, awesome videos that are on Belinda. So, if any of you know how to grab Belinda, it will benefit you. I'll just grab it for you. I want to give you as many resources as I can possibly do. So that, they have just an endless sea of stuff. Because it's hard to remember, and you're probably all scratching this down, right? But I just want to get you a video, so you don't have to write it down. But look at the difference. That is great. Like, such a grotesque lady. It was click, click, click. But not for production. So I actually would now come in and I have that set up. I have a direct light that's coming in, hitting from the side. And then I set up another one here, and there's a little bit of blue. So another thing you want to think about too is the colors come from space. So all the color that you need to think about is all in here. So I can sample here, ready for this. Or look at the map itself and grab that color. And then it's a matter of intensity and adjusting that intensity after you have positioned a light in a way. And I'll do that next. Yeah, see, this is significantly slower. Alright? Great for the still, not for production animation. Alright. This left side is still right side, still messed up. What's happening here is a matter of samples. So see some of this fragments right here has to do with the samples. Because I didn't turn this to high quality and I haven't helped the sample on that. So it's still kind of got flaws. That's one of them. The shadow sample. Almost there. Come on. It's painful. Painfully slow. It's so painfully slow you can't stand it. Almost. Okay, so another warning. If you do use, so I'm really starting to understand this Maya beast. And that is, when you use IPR or whatever, which gives you the select thing, and every time you make a change, it updates the render, make sure you turn that off before you go to do anything new. If you start tweaking, as long as the only thing you're messing with is the lighting settings or the shader settings, you're good. Do not start changing rendering settings. Do not start changing hair. Crash. Crash. Just so you know. Yeah.
When I tried in my yard, like it's rendering out wireframe, you know why I do that?
Yeah, because you then have to make a selection.
Oh, you have to like select
What you want. Yeah. So it'll light up. And when you go to change things that aren't just sliders over here, you have to turn that off. Otherwise, crash. And it crashes hard. No backup plan there. So now, holy cannoli. That was my original lighting. That was without, and there's that. Okay, now, what's going on? Sure. I just got to figure out where was that setting to. Oh, right here. This has got to be turned off. Under Common, Render Options, turn off default lights. Otherwise, it contaminates your scene. Got to be off. Otherwise, it's still lighting it. And so always test with no lights and make sure it comes out black. Or at least really low, like with just the ambient light, how my one render was. Then you know you got it all set up right. No contamination. No extra lighting happening. Remember when I said, God damn, my eyes are too bright in my render? That was annoying me? That's why. Because the default lights were lighting my eyes. And once I turned that off, whoa, much better results. And so even better results, you can either do one of two things. I sometimes then take this into Photoshop and then adjust the color adjustment, trying to get the look that I want and see what information is there. Either with the levels, or this is the thing that I had the hardest time with. Where's the exposure controls? Because in Maps, they put incremental ray. They're actually in the rendering settings. That's where my exposure controls are. Is in the environment in rendering. And I was like, does mine just not have that? But I found out they do. And so, and you probably, some of you may already know this, but that's the idea is you want to put in the actual camera. So for this camera, for the viewport, I click it, and if I come down here under mental ray, I have a lens shader. You can put a lot of things in here. Okay, but the one that I'm after, it's a mental ray. I don't want that. You could do the photographic one. It's, again, that's going to give you a hardcore amount of things to manipulate. But I'm just going to do basic, fast, simple. All right? Now, I'm probably going to have to, this isn't going to affect this at this point. I'm going to have to turn off the light, the scene, but I stored that because I can use it as reference when I want to rebuild and put the other lights in to try to create this using other lights. Okay? Because this is just intense. It took forever. It took 6 freaking minutes, almost 7 minutes to render that 1 image, compared to 41 seconds, 46. So that's a lot of time. That is significant difference. All right? Almost 7 times longer. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here. And again, I have this. There is a, I'm trying to get my hands on, so if you can help me out, any of you, grab a screen. I can get that for you so that we don't have to, it's just there. So remember, under Common, turn off Enable Decal default lights. I got to make sure I turn off this emit light under the value for the dome itself, under the settings for the Mac, where you put the HDR. Alright? Remember, color gain controls how bright that scene is.
Where's the enable default light?
It's under common in the render settings. So you can all go and relight your scene and send that to me before midnight tonight. Or not. Okay? So there's that. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to now re-render, but I'm going to use the IPR render, so now you understand, oh, in wireframe. So what I'm most concerned with what's going on over here. I'm going to just work on this side. I want to see what's going on with the eye, and I want to see what's going on with this highlight over here. And so it's back to being, a little bit darker. But oh, now this is even brighter than when I did it before. You know why? What did I do different? Put the exposure map in the lens of the camera, in the lens slot. So now, this is really good. This is even without, this is just the ambient. So I'm going to render this whole thing. This is, even without the dome as an emitter, it's still pretty damn good. Like, I would run with it, maybe. Right? But how can I make it amazing? I mean, this feels like it's in the scene, right? It really feels like it's there. It isn't picking up everything. And once we add that last layer of putting the other lights in, wow, very believable, very realistic renders. So I don't even care. This could be just a blob, and if you put this skin shader on the blob with some bump map, it's going to look like one badass cloud floating in reality. That's what I was getting at the other day, of saying, if you nail all the components, some of them can actually semi-blob. The most important, your lighting and your red shaders in the render. Most important. More so than the model. Yes?
Yeah, I can remember it was different than the lighter.
No, I don't think so. No, that's lighter. Look, that's lighter than this. That's the original. That's with the exposure.
Your IPR render was better.
Huh. What the hell?
A lot better.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a lot lighter. That's much better.
Can I save that? I didn't save that last time. Alright, I'll just do this again. Well, anyhow, we can get there with that. Then you go over to the exposure setting for that camera, and then we can totally readjust all the lighting and the contrast, the light value. Granted, some of that can be done in Photoshop, way faster. All right. But some of it, that means After Effects for animation, right? So remember when I was talking about when we do our storyboards, we do frames that look as good as they're going to look, and then we break it down like that. And maybe not our first brainstorm that we put together to sell your idea, because I'm your active creative director for all of your projects. You come and try to sell it to me. When I give you your team and when you come, you try to sell that idea. I'm going to do exactly what my creative director does all the time. And I'm going to ask you about turnaround times, all those things. But you have to sell it to me. And then we'll talk about the phases. First phase is drawings. Drawings and ideas, work through that. But eventually, as we get closer to production, I'm going to want to see the exact look. Okay, so I don't know if you guys see the holiday card last year? The snow one, the holiday card for MSU. Did you see that? Okay, well, I think I should. I had to make that in a matter of a week and a half. But I had to show exactly what every frame was, because it's so important to the image of the university that I don't dare communicate something that can tarnish the image. So it's amazing just the level of full-blown production I have to go through to sell the idea before I even go there. I actually almost had to make it before I even got to make it. And so that's just how it is. So let's like this and, what the WTF? Okay, I don't know the answer to that, but that's really freaking good skin. Is it good? I don't know what the difference is. I wonder if there's some kind of options for the IPR. That's interesting. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to IPR. So now you prove me wrong. I can live with it. And I'm going to come over now to my light. And I'm going to go down to the exposure simple. And now I've got essentially the thing that affects it the most is the gain. Don't touch the gamma. Don't touch the gamma. And then these other things have just subtle impact. But now I can come in and go and really get it much quicker. And that's without even touching the mat. And now why this is important to me is because, remember what I was saying, I complained earlier when I first started showing my eyes? They were super freaking bright. And now I can really adjust that. And then tweak this, and I may even, yes.
And your IPR renders, I look normal. The other ones, they look like they're glowing stuff. Is there a reason for that?
Yes. I don't know what the difference is. I mean, I've never noticed that there's a difference between IPR and the standard render, so I'm going to have to search on that. I don't know the answer, but I will by next class. I don't know. I do know that this does come out in the render. I know that the exposure control definitely is affected in the same way. So I don't know if it is just overriding something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you scroll back, are the eyes showing any of the ones you know?
They're definitely not here.
Not there, but the next to the left, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because it's illuminating from all directions. It's interesting. That's a little more reflective, but that's got the lighting rig on it with blue.
Are you getting light going through the head of the eye?
I definitely am right here because I don't have eye sacs. I don't have mouth sac either. That's one thing I just didn't need to make that. But eventually, you need to build the sac that goes around the eyelid. It shelters the eye. Same with the mouth. But we didn't make teeth. We didn't get tongue. It's just the head is really freaking complicated things. We didn't get real hair. So that's just a really helpful little tool of having that ability to just simply adjust your exposure. But I can also do it this way, where I come in and, I'm lucky I didn't crash. That is so much better though, isn't it? So much nicer. I don't know, maybe, but you know the difference, why my IPR would not render the same way as my full-blown render? No? Okay, that seems to be a really hot dog question. And it's a really hot dog question. So, like in this, or I'm going to take my darkest one, and I'm going to save it real quick. I didn't see it. Come on, I didn't see it. And I'll just make it a JPEG, blah, blah. Are we after? No, we have 2 minutes, so good. In fact, now, you'll be amazed at how much comes out just through the levels manipulating in Photoshop. And so, I didn't ban you guys from using Photoshop. I encouraged it with regards to improving the quality of your image. And so, there is no, I can't believe you had to use Photoshop. I don't believe, so what? Yeah, this was an interesting thing too. I got a warning from Photoshop that tweaked it and manipulated the Yeah, pick flat separation, man. I was gonna bummer. Okay, so I really can bring out and get almost, that's amazing that there's that much information in there. Now I really had to seriously tweak that. But with my midtones, I get a pretty decent amount of correction before it starts to get too grainy. So this is another way to maybe make your process a little bit faster in that, so you don't have to wait for render times inside of Amaya. Find something that is relatively in the area, and then just tweak it in Photoshop and try to get the levels, and that'll give you something to try to shoot for. Because again, there's always a lapse time in between each render. Alright, so the only other thing I'm going to do really quick here, real quick, as quick as I can. And I didn't put the direct light, is not in here anymore. So I'm just going to want to have a directional light, because the sun is directional. It's all parallel beams, it's not a spotlight. And so I would try to get as close as I could. Oh. Oh, they're linked up. That sucks. Let's make this. And I want to be able to see the texture. So now I know where that sun is. Right here. And if I need to see it better, then of course I can just bump that up with the hardware exposure. That doesn't actually affect the exposure of the render. That's just for viewport. And right there is where that brightest golden kind of area is coming from. And so, I'm going to go ahead and click. Maybe I already made one. Grab that. Leave the print right here. I think and then I position that and try to adjust its values. So I'm just going to leave us off right now, and I'll try to get back to it. Alright? Thank you. Look for your groups coming through your email. That's going to set up, and then we're going to run that process on Tuesday. Hopefully you guys